The executioner hesitates for a second, then tears the bandage away, and the scream that follows does not sound like a leader. It sounds like something broken, something human, something that was never meant to end like this. Maximilien Robespierre is dragged forward, his jaw shattered, his voice gone. The man who once decided who lived and who died, now unable to speak a single word for himself. A man in the crowd stares up, remembering the nights he stayed silent just to survive. A woman stands still, her husband taken by the same blade. Her eyes empty of victory, a child watches, confused, seeing not a monster, but a man about to vanish. No one cheers yet, not because they feel mercy, but because they recognize something terrifying. This could have been anyone. This was everyone. The blade waits above him, cold and indifferent. And in this final moment, there is no revolution, no justice, no power, only fear. If you want to understand how a man becomes the terror he once fought against, subscribe now and step deeper into the darkness. Before the revolution had a blade, it had men who sold justice like a commodity, lawyers who twisted words for gold, who defended the powerful and ignored the weak. In the same city, nobles lived behind heavy doors, drowning in wine and silk, untouched by hunger, untouched by consequence. And then there was Maximilien Robespierre. He did not belong to their world. He refused their gifts, their invitations, their games. While others built fortunes, he built a reputation. Quiet, precise, unyielding. He spoke not for kings, but for those who had no voice at all. People began to notice, not because he was loud, but because he was different. In a system where everything could be bought, he seemed like the one thing that could not. A poor man once waited outside the court just to see him walk past. A seamstress whispered his name like a promise. To them, he was not just a lawyer. He was proof that justice could still exist. In a world rotting from within, he became something dangerous. Hope. At first, nothing felt like betrayal. It felt like necessity. France was breaking, enemies closing in, fear spreading faster than truth. In moments like this, ideals are no longer safe. They are tested. And Maximilien Robespierre began to face a question no one could escape. What do you do when justice alone is not enough? He had believed in virtue, in fairness, in a system where truth could stand on its own. But now the world was louder, darker, more dangerous. And slowly, another thought began to take shape. If one man must die to save thousands, is that justice or is that mercy? If those who threaten the future are allowed to live, does that make you righteous or weak? He did not answer these questions all at once. No one ever does. They come quietly, returning again and again, until silence feels like agreement. And once a man accepts that evil must be destroyed for good to survive, something shifts inside him. Not suddenly, not violently, but permanently, because from that moment on, every decision is no longer about what is right. It becomes about what must be done. It did not begin as chaos. It began as order. Laws were rewritten, trials were shortened, decisions became faster, cleaner, unquestioned. What once took days now took minutes. And in the name of protecting the revolution, the machine began to move. Maximilien Robespierre did not see it as cruelty. He saw it as protection, a way to cut out danger before it could spread. But the blade did not choose. It only fell. A father was taken from his home after a careless sentence spoken in frustration. He never denied the revolution. He only questioned it once. That was enough. His children waited for him to return. He never did. A young woman stood before the tribunal, accused by suspicion alone. She said nothing, not out of guilt, but out of fear. Her silence was taken as proof. By evening, she was gone. The numbers grew, but numbers do not scream. Numbers do not beg. People do, and slowly, without anyone truly noticing the moment it happened, justice stopped asking questions. It only delivered answers. Night no longer brought rest, it brought echoes. Maximilien Robespierre lay awake, eyes open in the dark, listening. At first it was nothing, then it was something. A faint step beyond the door, a pause, then another. He held his breath, waiting for a knock that never came. Silence returned, but it was not empty. It pressed against him. In the distance, a cart rolled over stone, slow, heavy. He knew that sound. He had heard it many times before. Wheels carrying names, faces, lives toward the same ending. Now it lingered longer than it should, as if it had stopped just outside. He closed his eyes, but sleep did not bring peace. It brought images, hands gripping his arms, the cold wood beneath his feet, the weight of a blade above him. In the dream, he tried to speak, to explain, but no words came out. Only breath, only fear. He woke again, unsure if he had ever slept. The room felt smaller, the shadows closer. Every creak sounded like a step, every pause like a decision waiting to be made. And somewhere in that endless night, something changed. He was no longer watching the fear. He was living inside it, in the shadows of power. Fear does not stay in one man. It spreads. Joseph Fouché had seen too much to believe in purity anymore. He had stood in places where executions did not end with a single blade, where bodies fell in numbers too large to count, where silence followed not because there was peace, but because there was nothing left to say. He survived by adapting, by watching, by knowing when to step back before the ground collapsed beneath him. And now, he could feel it coming again. Jean-Lambert Tallien carried a different weight. Not ideology, not ambition, but a name. A woman waiting in a cell, her fate tied to decisions made far above her. Every passing day narrowed the distance between her life and the blade. For him, this was no longer politics. It was time running out. They had once stood with Maximilien Robespierre. They had believed, or at least followed. But belief fades quickly when survival becomes uncertain. In quiet rooms, behind closed doors, their thoughts began to align. Not because they were brave, but because they were afraid. The room was full, but no one felt safe. After weeks of absence, Maximilien Robespierre returned, pale, controlled, eyes sharper than before. Every movement was measured, every pause deliberate. The assembly watched him in silence, waiting for something they could not yet name. He began to speak, not loudly, not wildly, but with a certainty that cut deeper than anger. He spoke of betrayal, of hidden enemies, of corruption that had taken root inside the very heart of the revolution. He said there were names. He said there was a list. And then he stopped. He did not reveal a single one. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. The silence that followed was heavier than any accusation. Each man in that room felt it settle inside his chest. Am I on that list? No one dared to ask. No one dared to speak, because they all understood the truth at the same time. It did not matter who was guilty. It only mattered who would be next. And in that stillness, something invisible shifted. Not in Robespierre, but in everyone else. Mourning did not break the tension. It carried it into the streets. Inside the hall, voices would soon rise. But outside, the city was already changing. Word moved faster than truth. Names were whispered, then denied, then whispered again. No one knew what had happened, only that something had. In narrow streets, shopkeepers spoke in low voices, glancing over their shoulders. A rumor passed from one door to another, then to another, until it no longer had a source. They said Maximilien Robespierre had accused everyone. They said he would begin again. Soldiers stood at corners, gripping their weapons, waiting for orders that did not come. Some looked toward the assembly, others toward the barracks, unsure which direction held safety. Loyalty had become a question without an answer. A woman pulled her child closer as a cart rolled by, empty this time, but still feared. The sound alone was enough. Paris did not move forward that day. It paused. Every window became a place to watch from. Every footstep sounded louder than it should. Every silence felt like a warning. The city was not erupting. It was holding its breath. Night fell without relief, and the place that once held power now felt hollow. Maximilien Robespierre stood among those who remained. But even in a crowded room, something was missing. The voices were fewer, the confidence thinner, the silence heavier than before. A man who had once stood at his side avoided his eyes, then quietly stepped away, disappearing into a corridor without a word. No explanation, no farewell, only absence. Another, who had sworn loyalty in brighter days, was nowhere to be found. His place remained empty, as if he had never existed at all. No accusations were spoken, but none were needed. The truth revealed itself in small movements, in hesitation, in distance. Outside, the night stretched on, cold and uncertain. Inside, time slowed, each moment carrying a weight that could not be ignored. Robespierre did not call them back. He did not ask where they had gone. Perhaps he already knew. Power had once gathered people around him. Now it was pushing them away. And in that quiet unraveling, something deeper than fear began to take hold. Not panic, not anger, but the realization that he was standing alone. There was a time when a single sentence could change a fate. Maximilien. Robespierre did not need weapons. He did not need armies. He had words, calm, precise, absolute. He spoke, and men were judged. He spoke, and doors closed forever. His voice carried authority, and authority became power. He built control through language. Every argument sharpened, every accusation measured. People listened not because they wanted to, but because they had to. His voice became something larger than himself, something that decided who deserved to live and who did not. But power built on words has one weakness. It depends on being heard. Now there was no speech, no command, no defense. Only silence where his voice once stood. The same mouth that shaped justice could no longer form a single, clear sound. Breath replaced meaning. Pain replaced certainty. Around him, others spoke, others decided, Others moved forward without him. For the first time, he was no longer the one defining reality. He was trapped inside it. And in that silence, something irreversible revealed itself. A man who ruled through words had lost the only weapon he ever truly possessed. The room was prepared, but nothing here resembled justice. Maximilien Robespierre was brought forward, not as a voice, not as a leader, but as a body to be identified. No arguments were raised, no witnesses called, no time given for defense. The process moved with a cold efficiency that felt familiar. He had seen this before. He had shaped this before. A clerk stepped forward, reading names, confirming identities. One by one, men became sentences. One by one, lives were reduced to a decision already made. No one asked what had happened. No one needed to. There was a moment, brief and silent, where the truth stood clear. He did not need a trial. He had removed that long ago. Around him, the system continued without hesitation. It did not recognize irony. It did not feel regret. It only followed the rules it had been given. His rules. Others stood beside him, waiting for the same outcome. Their fates already sealed by the same logic that had sealed so many before. No anger filled the room. No chaos broke the order. Only a quiet, precise conclusion. A machine completing its final task. The carts moved slowly through the streets, wooden wheels grinding against stone, carrying men who once decided the fate of others. The crowd gathers, not in fear, but in restless anticipation. Maximilien Robespierre sits among them, silent, his presence no longer commanding, no longer feared in the same way. Faces surround him, some filled with anger, some with relief, some with something harder to name. A voice from the crowd rises, sharp, unforgiving. It calls out not for justice, but for memory, for every name that was lost, for every life that vanished without a final word. He cannot respond, not because he chooses silence, but because silence has been forced upon him. The irony settles over the moment like a weight. There will be no defense, no explanation, no final argument. He does not need to be judged. He had already decided how judgment works. The blade waits ahead, patient, unchanged. Around him, the city breathes differently now, but not freely. The fear has shifted, not disappeared. And as the procession moves forward, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The system he created does not recognize its creator. It only continues. The scaffold stands above the crowd, unchanged, patient, waiting for the next name to become a memory. Maximilien Robespierre is led forward, each step slower than the last, his body weakened, his silence heavy. The executioner reaches for the cloth wrapped around his shattered jaw. For a brief moment, time seems to pause. Then the bandage is torn away. The scream that follows is not controlled, not dignified. It breaks through the air, raw and violent, a sound stripped of power, stripped of meaning. And in that instant, something echoes. A man shouting his innocence before the blade fell. A woman crying out a name no one answered. A voice lost in the roar of a crowd that refused to listen. Those sounds had filled these streets before. They had risen, one after another, only to vanish beneath the same falling blade. Now they return, not as memory, but as reality. He does not hear them with his ears. He becomes them. The scream does not belong only to this moment. It carries every voice that was silenced, every plea that was ignored. And for the first time, He is not the one who decided. He is the one who understands. The blade falls, and the crowd erupts, but something does not end with that sound. Maximilien Robespierre is gone. His voice silenced, his power erased. The square begins to empty, people turning away, returning to their homes, to their streets, to their lives. But the fear does not leave with them. A man walks past his neighbor and lowers his eyes, unsure of what has been said, unsure of what might be remembered. A woman hears footsteps behind her and quickens her pace, not because she is guilty, but because she no longer knows who is safe. Doors close more quietly now. Conversations grow shorter, softer, unfinished. The revolution continues, but something inside it has changed. Trust has thinned, almost vanished. People no longer look at each other and see allies. They see possibilities, risks, dangers waiting to unfold. The machine may slow, the names may change, but the feeling remains. Because fear does not disappear when the man who used it is gone. It stays, it lingers, it learns to live in silence. And that is the true legacy. If you want to uncover more stories where power, fear, and human nature collide, subscribe now and step deeper into the darkness.